So I found some of these tiny ND filters in my camera cupboard, and it somewhat reignited an idea I had a very long time ago, which is to make a pair of sunglasses with variable ND filters as optics. And at the time I didn't have a 3D printer, I didn't even know that 3D printers existed, so I couldn't make them. But now we have really awesome sponsors like PCBware on our channel. And so we'll also be printing them in metal today, which will be really cool. So if you're unfamiliar with what a variable ND filter is, it's basically two polarizers stacked on top of each other. So this would be a polarizer with these lines, so to say, and if there's a reflection, then it reduces the reflection somehow. I'm not entirely sure how that works actually, but yeah, basically if you add another polarizer to that, you have these lines. And say you turn the polarizer on top of that, then you form kind of a grid. And now you've reduced the light that can enter through that optic, so to say. So basically you turn these filters and then the light is reduced. We use these in video productions to limit the amount of light that can enter our camera, and that way we hit our preferred settings. Now a few of these could have some useful applications, like if you'd go to the outdoors from a very dark environment, like you're just biking through a tunnel and then, you know, all of a sudden you hit that light, you can kind of screw them shut. In the end though, the ND filters are quite large, so the design might be a little funky. I don't think you'd wear these to like the office or something. Well, I don't think most people would wear these to the office. I think I would wear them to the office. But is that really something to be proud of? Now, because these filters are 33mm, we don't necessarily need to measure them, but I do want to check if that's in regard to the thread itself or the groove that's like kind of behind the thread. And in this case, it's the thread itself. So we need to make a little lip that the ND filters can click into. And the reason we're doing this is because it has polarizing properties, right? And if the reflective reducing lines are like pointing this way on this eye and kind of straight on this eye, this one might see reflections and this one might not. And that would be really freaky. That's also kind of a spoiler alert for the end of the video, where we'll talk about why these things might not have been commercialized yet. So that has to do with like the polarizing properties causing some issues. Now when it came time to make the hinges, I searched for the smaller screws in my collection, which are these M2 bolts. They're definitely still like larger than the ones you'd find on normal sunglasses. But I'm also kind of curious to see if we can make these a bit more durable, so to say. Like my biggest concern is like printing something and then having it break in like a week. That would be kind of wasteful. If you would like to go for smaller screws, I recommend going for a smaller nozzle on your printer. Currently, I'm using the 0.4 nozzle on mine, and I got this printed just last week, so this is the best time to do this because it's the most reliable. Now this is one of those trial and error projects because everybody's face is kind of different, and I want this one to somewhat fit my face perfectly. In this case I messed up the hinges as they don't stop at the correct point, but it did work as a proof of concept. That is also the nice thing about 3D printing. Because your face might be different from mine, you can make a pair of sunglasses that actually fits you well, and when or if they break, then you can just print a new pair. Ideally, we'd like to do this in under 15 minutes, so to say. But that also brings into question, like, is this rugged enough? Because I think the main question will be in the comment section, like, yeah, that's cool, but I mean, it's 3D printed, how strong can that be? And that's like a perception that people kind of need to throw out the window, because 3D printed parts are really strong. And I'll showcase this in the end of the video as well, where we'll just drop test a few, just to see like how strong is that compared to a normal pair of sunglasses. Now the nice thing about PLA is that you can bend it in hot water. So after it was all printed out and screwed together, I used boiling hot water to reheat the legs and give it the curvature it needs to hold onto your head. It's not necessarily the curvature of the leg itself going down, but more like that it clamps around your head. And I never really noticed that on my sunglasses, but they do that as well. Seems how everything was working out as a proof of concept. We can go on Amazon and order some variable ND filters. I'll leave a link to the ones that I bought in the description down below. And if you use that link to purchase anything on Amazon, I get a small kickback from that, which I really appreciate. If you would like to help me out even further, you can hit the sub button or leave a like, especially leave a comment, that helps the most. Now while those were being shipped, I went through a ton of design iterations, and you know, some of these projects go very well and you get it on the first try. And eventually I also just stopped filming because it's quite difficult to find new angles of like doing the same old stuff again. And yeah, eventually, you know, I went for a cross brace design you know, the filters are kind of heavy, not heavy in terms of actual weight, but in the way that they look, and that kind of needs to be complemented in the design so that the entire sunglasses look as sturdy as the filter, so to say. If everything's really thin and you have these massive things on there, then it looks really strange. After printing it, screwing it all together, putting the filters in place and reheating it with PLA, I put them on and I noticed quite a lot of glare coming in from the sides, which was messing with the clear image that comes out of these filters. So at this point I started experimenting with glare shields, in this case like removable glare shields, which didn't really work out because my printer isn't that accurate. And if I had known that the end result was going to be so usable, I would have maybe put a little bit more effort into this. But in the end I landed on some fixed glare shields with a groove in the side to allow the legs to collapse into. Doesn't work as well as normal sunglasses, but it was the best I could come up with in the short amount of time we had. If you're doing this yourself, it's worth noting that these hinges might need to be angled slightly so that the legs, when they collapse, then they don't collapse in at each other and kind of roll over each other like that. I didn't run into this issue with my PLA version, but as soon as you start printing this in more solid materials, it becomes more of an issue. Then I sent these to PCBWay to be printed in resin, and I chose this transparent filament. And I wasn't expecting this, I was expecting like a more frosted look, because I really didn't know that this was possible, so to say. And it's really cool, I really appreciate this, because that also allows us to see like, okay, what's possible and what can we maybe use for future projects as well. Now, this transparent look might not be such a great design for these sunglasses, because those glare shields are basically rendered inert, or like that's not great. They come in at around 19 grams. But this is without the screws holding the legs in place. So I guess when you add those, it might come in at like 20 grams or something like that. Next we have TPU, which is more of a flexible filament. I was expecting this one to be somewhat like more drop resistant. It's really bendy, which is pretty cool, but it doesn't stick on your head really nicely. So I can't recommend printing them in TPU. It's not really good for sunglasses. Now I had a friend over who has like dreadlocks and has this style going on, which like these sunglasses really suit her the best because they look so like Mad Maxy or something, like something you'd find in a movie, like it's a movie prop. They don't really suit people who look too normal. Of course, I also wanted to try out their metal printing service, so we have Tool Steel here, and PCBWay quotes an instant price, which is really nice. And of course, they also offer their other services like PCB production and assembly, sheet metal fabrication, injection molding, and alongside 3D printing, also CNC machining, which might have also been really nice to try out on this project, but that's for a different video. I'm really quite excited about these Tool Steel versions because you can't actually tell that they're 3D printed. It doesn't have any layer lines or anything, and it looks more like cast iron. Everybody who picks them up is really like, whoa, this is quality, because it has that weight to it as well. So I'll leave a link to PCBWay services in the description down below. Definitely check them out. The Tool Steel versions are incredibly heavy, but I just wanted to see what the material would be like and kind of check out like maybe this is useful for future projects, so to say. And it definitely is. It's really cool. Now we did have to bend the legs a little bit, but that also resulted in it fitting a lot better. And these are actually, to my surprise, like the best ones for these sunglasses. They are quite heavy at 121 grams, which for prolonged wear time might be an issue. An alternative to this though is perhaps aluminium, and we also printed it in that. Has the same properties of, you know, fitting around your head quite nicely, but is at a lot lighter weight. And it feels a little less strong, but that's probably also because of the weight. There's really two groups that I've shown this to. The one group is my film friends, or like the people I study with, and the other group doesn't have anything to do with photography or film. They don't even know how cameras work, so to say. That group has no idea what I'm doing. They're just like, well, you spent time on this, and they don't really understand. The film group friends, they really like this. They're really excited for it. They're like, oh, you could sell this for a lot of money. It's really cool. Which we won't do, but I will leave the files in the description down below. So if you want to print these yourself, they're based around 43mm filters, I think. Yeah, 43mm. So you can buy those on Amazon and put them in there. And if you come up with a better design than I do, definitely let me know and just send it to me. Maybe I'll feature it in a video if you want me to. If you don't want me to, also tell me. but I'd be very excited to have like a little contest to see like who makes the best sunglasses design for 3D printed sunglasses design. That would be really nice to see. Now initially we also had this idea of drop testing them just to showcase the strength of printed parts, which we will do to the PLA versions that I printed myself and maybe the resin one as well, but that's at the end of the video. These metal versions, I'm not going to drop test those. I'm pretty sure that I would damage the floor if I did so, but mainly because I also just want to continue wearing them and I don't want to dent them. That's how nice they turned out. So I wish I'd put in like a little bit more effort into the design, because these are actually like really wearable. Now, I also talked about this issue with like the polarizing properties, which is probably why these sunglasses haven't been commercialized yet, because it's actually quite funky when you wear them. It's almost like you're wearing the 3D glasses that you find in a cinema. And so it has this strange effect where one eye is seeing a reflection and the other one is not. I'll try to illustrate this in the video by overlaying two images from slightly different directions. That's kind of what it looks like. And so if you're not used to that, it might be kind of dangerous. And you can get them correctly, like you can line them up properly, and then it works for a little bit, but as soon as you turn your head, then it doesn't work. And I'm really confused as to how that works with normal polarizing sunglasses, because those don't suffer from that issue. Let me know in the comment section if you know why that happens with these and not with the normal polarizers. Maybe it does have to do with the grid thing. Anyway, let's drop test some stuff. Right, just to give some context here to the drop test, I only did this after I finished editing the video, otherwise I'd run the risk of not having enough footage, so to say. So I know it's not really a great indicator for how strong something is, but at least it's kind of interesting to look at and observe like what actually happens. I could break them in my hands, but that also wouldn't really be a great indicator, so I would definitely just recommend printing them for yourself if you have a 3D printer, so to say. And yeah, anyway, I dropped these from a height of 2.6 meters, which is basically the maximum I'm able to achieve in this apartment. I couldn't really get the PLA version to break. Eventually the hinges did loosen up a little bit, and I know that if I had continued to throw them at the floor, then they would have eventually broken down, but in this test it wasn't the case. Now the resin version sadly broke on the first test, snapping right in half there. With the TPU version I did one test, which kind of convinced me that those will never break because it's just too flexible, but again I don't recommend printing them in TPU. It's a little flimsy